Anyway, Alabama, a team most people thought would bounce back this year, and they still could, but they did not look like they're going to bounce back at all this season, except that first drive where it was like, oh, shoot, they're going to run the ball. They ran for 55 yards on that drive, punch it in, go up, and they give up 24 unanswered. Defense can't get a stop. They look soft. Linebackers missing tackles, not filling gaps, falling for eye candy that is very common in a Gus Malzahn scheme. And the wheels just fell off. The offense lost its steam. They couldn't really protect Ty Simpson. Ty Simpson also looked like a deer in headlights. They went away from the running game. Receivers were dropping passes. It was just bad all around. And then when they tried to right the ship, it was too little too late. And they end up losing by 2 touchdowns. And kind of a shocker. Even just like if you had FSU winning this game, I think you would have talked to almost nobody that would have had Florida State dominating Alabama like this because of the talent Alabama had, especially on the 2 lines of scrimmage, and it just did not show. So thoughts on the games, like what? I don't know, just like
I think I have the most notes from this game that I do from any other game. I'm going to start with Tommy Castellanos because he was kind of like the main storyline leading up to this game was all the trash talking he was doing. And then Alabama players kind of, hitting back and being like, you just like wait. Like it was an interesting dynamic leading up to it. And a lot of people were worried that Florida State was going to get beat and Castellanos was going to get made pretty goofy. And instead he goes off and runs for 78 yards on a touchdown, 16 attempts.
68 attempts would be crazy, man.
16 attempts. And then was very effective through the air, 9 for 14 with 152 yards. And then I believe another touchdown. I don't have it up there. Maybe not. I can't remember.
No, he only had 1 touchdown on the ground.
Just the one rushing touchdown, 10.88 yards per attempt. So, and just led a very effective offense. Florida State didn't have a 3-and-out until the fourth quarter. So they were not getting sent off the field quickly. They were staying on the field. But it was just concerning as far as Alabama's defense goes to see them struggle with a rushing quarterback yet again. The Oklahoma game last year, John Mateer ran all over them.
Jackson Arnold.
Thank you. What? Jackson Arnold, thank you. I don't know.
You're
yes,
good.
Jackson Arnold, the rushing quarterback at Oklahoma last year, ran all over them. They lost to Vanderbilt with Diego Pavia, who didn't post the same stats that Arnold did, but is still a rushing quarterback. It's just been kind of a continuous struggle for them. And now it kind of turns into like, what adjustments are they going to make if they haven't made them yet? And it's a little concerning for me seeing that. But what are your thoughts specifically on like Florida State side of the ball, JP?
I thought Tommy looked great. Backed up the hype. 152 yards through the air, like you said, on only 9 completions. So this guy was airing it out. And as you said, 10.8 yards per attempt. I thought that was immediately something that was like, okay, that's impressive. To do that against the caliber of defense that Alabama supposedly had was really impressive. I thought Tommy really carried the show for them, and I thought he was the engine of this run that Florida State had yesterday. He leads them in rushing yards, leads them in passing yards. And so, not that it was a one-man show, but it felt that way. It felt that way watching the game, that this Tommy was just not someone that was going to be tackled. And I thought Florida State really handled to score 31 points against this Alabama defense. If you had told a Florida State fan you did that 2 days ago, they would probably think they won the game.
Yeah.
And they did, doing it that way. The rain didn't play as much as a factor as we previously thought it was going to. Although it did rain for a little bit.
I might
of the
disagree.
game.
I think it played a pretty big factor, but that's just like I think that Florida's ability to run the ball, I think, is where the rain played a factor. Is it pushed the game on the ground, and Ryan Williams had 3 drops. I think that potentially has a lot to do with wet balls, slippery hands. Like, I think the rain did end up playing a factor.
Should have soaked up those balls more, I guess.
Yeah.
2 things I'll say on that. Not saying the rain doesn't play a factor, but there's no reason Alabama shouldn't be able to run the ball either.
Yeah.
And then also, compared to what we were expecting from the weather, where it was potentially just going to like rain all game and just be terrible weather, it was not that.
That's fair.
Except for that maybe one stretch where it really was raining.
Yeah, that's my point there.
Conditions do still matter, but we were potentially like thinking like a monsoon hurricane type game, and it wasn't that.
I don't think they won the game, though, offensively. The offense was a big part of it, but defensively is the reason they won this game. They had 7 tackles for loss. as you said, Bama rushed for 55 yards on the opening drive, 29 rushing yards the rest of the game. That opening drive, they took nearly 9 minutes off the clock, 8 minutes, 50 seconds. The rest of the game, they had one drive longer than 4 minutes. The rest were 3 minutes and 15 seconds or less. Multiple under 2 minutes, and even two that were under a minute. Offensively, they could not get anything going after that first drive, and that was extremely surprising to see. Earl Little was amazing in that game. I think he's a star in the making. I believe he had 10 tackles yesterday. 9 tackles, 4 solo, and of course a TFL as well. I thought he really, really played well. He kind of quickly becomes a name for Florida State. The big thing I hear, I think, is it's crazy that this game is not swaying Vegas specifically. Florida State has risen a little bit up the ACC title ranks, but only a few spots. Alabama is still sitting there at 4 to win the ACC. And so I think a big point for this game is I don't know if we should react as much as we should yet. Because what if Florida State is just a top 10 team in the country and Alabama went into Doak Campbell, and just got beat by Florida State? What if Alabama is terrible under Kalen DeBoer? What if they're a 7-5 football team? Both of those things could happen, and then we shouldn't react as much as we should. What if they're both top 10 teams in the country, and it was just a competitive battle in week 1, and we don't really know how to react? I think the big thing there is let's let this play out a little bit. Yeah. Let's not go ahead and draw up conclusions. But I think the first reaction you are allowed to make, and the first reaction I'm making is Florida State could very well win the ACC, and Alabama should not be a national championship pick.
Yeah. I think
it's too late for that.
Yeah, it is, unfortunately. I think I'll say I agree with you. I do think the reactions should get there eventually, because I do think that we're going to find out one of those things is true. Either Alabama is worse than we thought, and we should get to that extreme reaction at some point.
Both can also be true, I will say.
Yeah, but I do agree that we just don't know what it is yet. And so overreacting at this point doesn't really make sense. But this game is going to have implications, and we're going to be able to look back on this in 5-6 weeks and hopefully be able to identify, well, did Florida State just outplay Alabama because they're better, or did Alabama just underperform? Like, I think we're going to know a lot more about how to handle this situation in a couple weeks. I also want to point out Florida State's defense was incredible on 4th down. They held Alabama to 2 for 5 on 4th down, really forcing them to go for it. A lot of 4th down attempts for Alabama. I mean, that is the reality when you're down, but
yeah, I mean, some of them were like 4th and 10.
Yeah,
but still,
and then
still
also
well done to hold.
Just watching the game, Florida State just looked so fast and so physical. That was one of the things that kept blowing me away, was on the D-line, winning one-on-ones constantly, getting in the backfield, meeting the running back. Or there were a couple where they were just out in the flat, like on screens, or running backs bouncing to the outside where they were just there. The Florida State defense was almost always there. That really impressed me, seeing the physicality that they played with and the speed they played with. And then the lack of that on Alabama's defense, I think, was kind of an issue, especially in the linebacker core. There were a lot of times where Castellanos would get into that second layer at the linebacker core, and there was just nobody there.
They always fell ahead for 3 or 4 yards, like after kind of the first hit. Like a defensive lineman would like kind of get an arm on him, but there was no one there ever to clean up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so Castellanos constantly hurt them in that way, just like getting the extra couple yards up the middle. And there were some, the QB, the play calling for Florida State by Gus Malzahn, I thought was fantastic. Getting Castellanos, he always seemed to be able to time up the QB draw to get 7 or 8 yards very consistently. I remember there was one, I think like in the third quarter, where they were driving and then Castellanos takes a QB draw, slips, like there was no hole, and he slips through and then gets 6 or 7 yards out of it. I was like, wow, like there's Alabama just can't stop this right now. So the QB run and the play calling by Malzahn was very well done, but I do agree that waiting to react is going to be the best approach.
They're not waiting in T-Town, I will say.
They are not. It is very funny to see Twitter accounts I've never heard of on my feed talking about Kalen DeBoer and how he needs to be fired. And we can get into that later because we'll talk about buying or selling on Alabama in our later segments. But what are your thoughts on Kalen DeBoer coming out of this game?
I'm disappointed in him. I'm not talking about amen from Tucker in the chat on wise men make observations, foolish men make conclusions. My observation here is the team just wasn't ready, wasn't as fired up as Florida State, and that a lot falls on coaching. And I think it was an issue at times last year. And the reason I'm disappointed is because for someone that loved his Washington teams, that was not an issue at Washington. They always played fiery. They always were ready to go. They weren't someone that they were constantly making stupid mistakes there. And so it's just not what I expected to happen under DeBoer at Alabama. So I'm very disappointed in him. And that's because I had high expectations, and I really hope he can right the ship because I do really like him. But
yeah, I really didn't expect the way the team played and kind of like the discipline to be as big an issue. Penalties were a huge problem yesterday. They had 8 penalties for 70 yards. Florida State only had 4 for 40. Listening to Josh Pate this afternoon, DeBoer at Alabama has never had a team with less penalties than the opposing team. And that is a huge problem. You cannot win a lot of football games if you are going to commit more penalties than the other team every single time. You are going to lose the big games. You're going to lose a couple small games. You're going to get upset. Like, that is just not a reliable, consistent way to perform and to win ball games. So that was a huge concern. But I'm not going to talk about DeBoer anymore because I have a lot more to say about him later.
Real quick, I just did say I was really disappointed in DeBoer, but like the players just like I also feel like they didn't do their job either. And obviously, like the coaches it's their job to get them in the right spots. But when it comes to linebackers not run filling, linebackers getting blown up by blockers, like DeBoer can't make people win assignments. So I like wouldn't put the blame solely on him. I do feel like there's just some. I don't know. Like I don't know how to feel about the culture there, which is such a weird thing to say about Alabama. And coaching does reflect culture, but even like Nick Saban was like basically I'm ready to retire because the culture is going in a way that I don't like, and so I'm going to get out. And so it's just kind of weird vibes there all around. I mean, just see how it plays out.
Yeah. And
hope he can right the ship. But JP, you got something you definitely want to say? I see it in your face.
Kalen DeBoer and Alabama are 5-5 in their last 10 games. They're fairly quickly about to be 7-6. When they lose to Georgia in 3 weeks, DeBoer already has 4 unranked losses at Alabama. Nick Saban, it took over a decade for that to happen.
That's what Josh Pate said. I looked it up yesterday. He had 4 in his first 2 years. According to what I was looking at, I can go back and double check that.
I think the biggest point, the group is light years far from a Nick Saban Alabama team.
Yes.
And in quickly 2 years, they have gone 9-3, disappointing year, losing to Vanderbilt. And now they have maybe potentially lost a game to a mid-tier ACC game just to be embarrassed on the road to open the season. And effort, toughness, and will to win are being questioned of an Alabama team. And that is really kind of disappointing to see. The clips you've seen on Twitter of poor effort from players throughout yesterday's game are evident. They're being seen multiple times throughout a series, not even a game. It's very disappointing to see. Offensively, did not be able to move the ball, was disappointing to not be able to move the ball on the ground, regardless of Jam Miller's not playing or not. That was really disappointing to see. And so I think out of the, like I said, you shouldn't make big reactions.
There's more sample size for this one.
I think there's enough to be said that this is really concerning if you're an Alabama fan. And I hate to say it, but it feels like a told you so. It was one of my first reactions to Nick Saban retiring and even the hiring of Kalen DeBoer. It was get ready to lose a lot more. I hope you're ready, to adjust to that, because that is
they were always going to lose a lot more.
Going to be the case, and yet they still are reacting as if they should be winning a championship this year, which they had rightful eyes to look at that, but that ship has sailed.
Yeah, I think Chromie kind of is putting it well in chat. What I was trying to say earlier of it was trending that way Saban's last season. That's kind of why Saban got out, and so it's still on DeBoer because he's not fixed it, and it has gotten worse. but it's not like the last year of Saban's tenure was this, immaculate. They went and won the title, dominated everyone as they had for stretches.
I understand
he was
that.
Clearly very frustrated that year.
But I disagree because they were the 4th-ranked team in the nation, and they were one play from beating the national champions in Michigan in overtime on the Rose Bowl.
And yet that year we were still saying this is not a Saban standard team.
But
right?
that Saban team,
it's clearly gotten
was
so much
still
worse.
Way better than the past 2 years of Alabama.
That's what I'm saying. It's gotten worse.
Yes, I understand that, but I also don't think like that this is like something that Saban started. I think it was.
I think the players started it.
It is something that is, like you said, occurred from the players of this is not a Saban culture anymore, and so now that the accountability is just not there as much as it had been in the past, clearly, and that's being shown out there on the field.